Under the summer sun of 1876, the winds whispered through the long grasses of the Montana plains, carrying with them the scent of smoke, the murmur of tension, and the heavy thrum of drums echoing from the encampment by the Little Bighorn River. That land, sacred and wild, bore witness to a moment suspended in time, a collision of destinies, foretold not only by the weight of years, but by visions, bloodlines, and the ever-tightening noose of a nation expanding westward. In its heart stood a man of deep stillness and spiritual gravity, a Lakota holy man whose very name inspired reverence and resistance. Tatanka Ayotake, known to the world as Sitting Bull. His was not the journey of a warrior seeking conquest, but of a seer charged with preserving the soul of a people who had long danced with the rhythms of the earth, the bison, the river, and the sky. Born around 1831 in the Grand River territory of what is now South Dakota, Sitting Bull entered the world during a time of equilibrium, when the plains still roamed free under the hooves of buffalo, and the sovereign paths of the Sioux remained unbroken. His early years, shaped by his father's warrior lineage and the spiritual teachings of his tribe, sowed the seeds of a man who would one day see beyond the horizon of his generation. Even as a boy, he was slow to anger, but quick to observe, watching the delicate balance of nature and society tilt gradually under the increasing shadow of white encroachment. By the 1850s, the frontier had begun its fatal churn. Settlers surged west under banners of divine mission, while treaties inked in Washington were broken like twigs snapped beneath cavalry boots. The Fort Laramie Treaty of 1851 had drawn lines that gave the Lakota dominion over wide swaths of land, but those lines, drawn without deep understanding or lasting respect, were soon violated. The discovery of gold in the Black Hills, Hashapa, sacred ground to the Sioux, became a turning point, the moment when promises dissolved in the fever of mineral wealth. For Sitting Bull, resistance was not an act of rebellion, but of preservation. He refused to sign treaties that would dismember his people's heritage. Unlike other leaders who chose the pen over the lance, he stood apart, gathering strength not only as a war chief, but as a spiritual lodestar. His Sundance ceremony in 1876, in which he offered his flesh and blood in piercing agony, culminated in a vision, soldiers falling into camp like grasshoppers from the sky, a prophecy as poetic as it was foreboding. Elsewhere, in the marble corridors of Washington and the dusty outposts of the West, another narrative unfolded, a story of ambition wrapped in brass buttons and polished boots. George Armstrong Custer, a man of dashing arrogance and reckless courage, embodied the American thirst for glory. He had tasted immortality at Gettysburg and longed to carve his name once more into the granite of history. But his rise was not without a shadow. After the Civil War, his exploits turned westward, fueled by the belief that subduing native resistance would enshrine him in legend. Custer's 7th Cavalry, hardened and weary, marched under his unwavering confidence. Even as scouts and allies warned of the immense encampment awaiting them by the Little Bighorn. Yet in the summer of 1876, pride galloped faster than prudence. What unfolded on June 25th was not a battle, but a reckoning. Sitting Bull, though not a frontline commander that day, had already shaped the course of the engagement. His vision had inspired unity among the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho bands, often divided but now bound by a singular purpose. His influence lay in the spiritual clarity he had gifted his people, a certainty that the winds of that day would favor them. As Custer divided his forces into smaller detachments in a fatal attempt at encirclement, warriors surged from the village like a tide released. Among them were men of great renown. Crazy Horse, charging with spectral fury and gall, whose heart burned with the grief of a murdered family. The valley erupted into chaos, smoke coiling upward as bullets tore through air and bodies. In the end, not one man from Custer's immediate command survived. Horses screamed. The earth drank deeply. The victory at Little Bighorn stunned the American conscience. It was a moment of triumph for the Sioux, but it would not hold. In its aftermath, the machinery of empire ground forward with renewed ruthlessness. The press called it a massacre. The government called it a call to arms. And the reservation system, once a boundary, now became a cage. For Sitting Bull, the years that followed were a slow retreat, not of spirit, but of geography. Hounded by soldiers and policy, he led his band northward into Canada, seeking refuge beneath the Crown's promise of neutrality. But the land was harsh, the winters unforgiving, and the buffalo, lifeblood of the plains, were vanishing. Hunger gnawed and hope thinned like the morning mist. In 1881, dignity held intact, Sitting Bull returned to U.S. soil and surrendered. But he did not surrender his soul. The government sought to domesticate him, first as a prisoner, then as a curiosity. In 1885, he was enlisted into Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, riding in pageants before throngs of spectators who cheered yet understood nothing of the man before them. For a time he played the role they gave him. But inside, the drumbeat of resistance never ceased. He spoke often to his people of unity, of heritage, of identity unbroken by borders. The agents who watched him grew uneasy. In 1890, as the ghost dance religion spread, a belief that through ritual, the ancestors would return and the white man's dominance would vanish, the authorities panicked, fearing that Sitting Bull, even in his twilight, might become the spark of another rebellion. Indian police were sent to arrest him. What happened in the gray chill of December 15th, 1890, was not justice, but a calculated extinguishment. As officers approached his cabin on the Standing Rock Reservation, a struggle broke out. Shots rang. Sitting Bull fell, struck down not in battle, but in betrayal. His blood darkened the snow. His body lay still, but his spirit, bound to myth, memory, and resistance, did not fade. The legacy of Sitting Bull is written not only in history books, but in the veins of descendants who still speak his name with reverence. He was not merely a chief or a holy man. He was a mirror held up to America, reflecting both the nobility of a people who cherished the land and the tragedy of a nation that failed to see its soul in them. The Battle of Little Bighorn, long romanticized and debated, remains a fulcrum in the story of the American West. To some, it was Custer's folly. To others, it was the last breath of true freedom for the Plains Indians. But to understand it fully is to understand the man who foresaw it, who prepared for it, not with strategy, but with sacrifice. His vision, his ceremony, his unwavering faith in the dignity of his people. These were the weapons that shaped the battle as surely as any rifle. And when the dust settled and the last hoofbeats faded into silence, it was not just a battle that had ended. It was an era. Across the hills and valleys where the Lakota once hunted and sang, the echoes still linger. Archival photographs bear his image, unflinching and solemn. His words, often paraphrased through time, still cut with clarity. I am the last man of my people who will not bow. That prophecy, like the one that came before Little Bighorn, speaks not of surrender, but of survival. A survival not of place, but of purpose. And in that, Sitting Bull still stands. History does not sleep, it waits. In the names we remember, and the voices we recover, it lives on. If Sitting Bull's story moved you, if the echoes of the past stirred something in your present, let it be known. Leave a comment below. Share your thoughts, your reflections, your questions. Subscribe to the channel to walk further into the forgotten trails of history with us. And if you believe these stories matter, like this video, so others might find them too. The frontier may be gone, but its truth still rides.